Hi fourth years, I'm going to do another demonstration video to show you what you're going to be doing for your next task for your expressive unit. But before I do that, I'm just going to go over what you should have completed at home by now since Christmas. So the first thing was a tonal composition sketch. Okay, now this was a drawing of multiple objects, like this example here. It must be based on your theme, okay, so that's either washed up seaside, cultural, art studio or kitchen, okay? So it's just tonal using a normal pencil with a collection of objects. So that was the first task you need to do, making sure that you include all your tones from really dark tones to medium tones and light tones. The second task was a colour pencil study, and that was an investigation study. Okay, and that will look a little bit like this. It's just one single object on its own that's related to your theme, and try and make sure that that object can be seen in the first tonal composition sketch that you did. So by now, ideally, you'd be looking to have both of these completed, okay? This is a tonal composition sketch with multiple objects. This is a colour pencil investigation study with one object. So once you've done that, we are then going to move on to another composition sketch. However, this time we're going to use one colour on its own. Now, when you're picking your colour, think about what connotations colours have. So, for example, blue often has connotations of sadness or calmness. Red can have connotations of anger or love. Orange can be quite energetic. Okay, green can be quite earthy and natural. So think about the connotations that your colours have. I would recommend that you try and stay away from yellow, because yellow is notoriously difficult for trying to achieve tone, okay? Even orange can be a little bit difficult sometimes. The colour that I'm going to pick today is blue, okay? We've got a washed up theme here. I think blue is quite calming, so I think I want to go for that. Now, I've already sketched out this drawing here. Just remember that when you're sketching things out, remember about your ellipses. You need to make sure that they're correct, okay? Remember to repeat your ellipses if you've got a bottle, so that you've got the same curve in the labels and the base. Think about the perspective as well. So for example, this starfish, the legs that are coming towards me should be slightly bigger, and then the legs going away should be slightly smaller. Okay, so that one there should be slightly thinner. Now, once you're happy with your sketch, you are then going to pick your colour and only use that one single colour, okay? It's basically a tonal study, but with one colour. Okay, so I'm going to pick blue, and I'm going to start off with the bottle. And with the bottle, I'm just going to look at the dark areas first, okay? And remember everything you know about shading. Think about your contour lines. So I'm following the shape of the bottle round. I'm constantly looking back at the image that I've got on my computer of the composition. So it's really quite dark under here. And then it gets slightly lighter around here. And with bottles, you will often find that the highlights kind of come down in streaks, like linear streaks, and it does with this one, the further up it gets. Again, think about your contour lines, and then up here, it's really quite dark, and then there's a highlight right next to it. So do you see that streak there? How it's quite linear? That's quite common when you look at the reflections in the bottles and things. Again, between these labels here, it's really quite dark, but then there's a sharp reflection here. So I'm just going to leave that the tone of the paper. I'm not going to shade that in at all because it's really quite bright. And then up here you can actually see the label on the back of the bottle. So it's not quite as dark there, but then it gets much darker around it. So you can see the label coming through at the back of the bottle. And then again up here, a really, really dark area. So I'm looking at the dark areas first and making them as dark as I can possibly go. And then I'm basing the other tones around it. And then this area here is much, much lighter. So you can see the bottle starting to build up a little bit. Now, another thing that I want you to consider is trying to make sure that you think about the texture of the objects, okay? So the bottle's obviously quite smooth. However, the starfish has got lots of really nice, interesting textures. So instead of long streaks, you might want to do lots of interesting mark making here. So these are basically just kind of little squiggles. Trying to show a little bit of that texture on the starfish. Once I've got that, I can then start to include a little bit more shading on top. Because it's not all one tone, we need to show the difference in the shading in order to make it look more three-dimensional. Really dark around here, underneath. Okay, so you can see clearly the difference between the texture here and here. It's exactly the same with the rope as well. Now with the rope, again, think about your mark making, think about how you're going to show that texture. So this one, I'm just going to do little rough dashes on each side. Remember, this is washed up as well. You want it to look quite rustic. So it's alright if it looks a little bit sketchy. Okay, so you can see three quite different textures there. You've got the texture of the rope. Here you've got the texture of the starfish, and you've got the smoother texture of the bottle. Please don't forget that when you're doing this, you really need to include the shading underneath the objects as well. So it's really, really dark under here. And then it gets much, much softer. And you can see already, just in that section there, by adding that darker shadow underneath, it makes the starfish on top really stand out. Okay, so your task for this week is to do a monochromatic study. That's one colour pencil only to do the entire study, and you're doing this of multiple objects. You will find these images in Teams, in files, and you're either picking your theme of seaside or washed up, cultural, art studio or kitchen. Let me know if you have any issues.